In most places, and Hawaii is no exception, water, how to use it, how to share it, and how to protect it is the subject of countless legal disputes and court battles. It's an issue that often pits neighbor against neighbor, community against community, business against business. You get the picture. Such was the case on the west side of Kauai, and the use of the Waimea River and its tributaries, which flow from on high and into the Pacific, carving along their way the stunningly beautiful Waimea Canyon, often referred to as the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. This is the story of how disparate, often warring interests came together and figured out how to share a finite resource, the waters of the Waimea.
And so we started digging into this situation to say, where's the water going and why is this happening?
David Hinken, a longtime Hawaii-based attorney with Earth Justice, a nonprofit public interest law firm that took on the case of local farmers who have cultivated taro and other crops along the lower portion of the Waimea River for decades. These are plots of land often passed down from one generation to the next.
You know, water is life, and if life is sustained by it, as our kupuna would say, that we need to be the ones to take care of it. We need to be the ones to ensure that it's clean, it's healthy, and it will continue to provide a source for people to farm and feed themselves.
You know, we're taro farmers across the valley, in Makaweli Valley here, but we come down this road and cross this river at this crossing every day to get to our taro patches, and over the years we've just seen a steady decline in the amount of water coming down, and it's just a steady decline in the opu and the river life, and so, you know, we kind of got talking that, man, the river looks terrible.
So John, Kaina, and several other farmers formed a hui, Po'ai Vai Ola, and with Hinken's help they took on the state, big agricultural interest, and the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, or KIUC.
And we kept ending up with the same conclusion, which is there was no justification for continuing the diversion of Waimea River water. You used to have a plantation growing sugarcane, which is one of the thirstiest crops possible.
Large-scale sugarcane cultivation ended on Kauai in 2001, and the plantations were shuttered.
So most of the land was lying fallow, and yet tens of millions of gallons were still being exported out of this watershed and onto the Mana Plain, and we had to ask ourselves why. So in 2013, July of 2013, we filed a petition with the Water Commission asking the Water Commission to take a look at the rivers in the Waimea River system and ensure that they had the water of life that they needed to restore the ecosystem, to restore this natural system on which the community depends.
At the same time,
we filed a complaint that said that the Agribusiness Development Corporation, which is responsible for the ditch, was wasting the water, that they were dumping the water, that they weren't using water for productive use like agriculture, but just taking it out of the river and on a road to nowhere.
That road to nowhere, or in this case, a river to nowhere, was destined to be tied up for years, maybe even decades, in legal wranglings, which meant hugely expensive and tremendously time-consuming court and state administrative battles. Meanwhile, the small downstream farmers would struggle to keep their crops from wilting in the intense Hawaiian sun.
Over the course of the next couple of years was sort of a voyage of discovery, both for Earth Justice and Po'ai Vaiola, as well as the Water Commission, as we pushed to dig into the facts to find out what was really going on here, and the facts were actually quite shocking.
He explains that upwards of 20 million gallons of water a day were being diverted out of the Waimea watershed by Big Ag, much more than was needed for the crops that replaced sugarcane.
What we learned with the commission is that the Agribusiness Development Corporation and the Keikaha Agriculture Association, which managed the ditch for ADC, weren't even keeping tabs on how much water the farmers were taking or the agribusiness was taking. What came out through this investigation was that the water was actually being diverted to produce hydropower.
We're at the Waimea diversion in the bottom of Waimea Canyon. This diversion was put in 1906. It diverts the Waimea River water into a tunnel, and then it enters the Kikaha ditch. Right directly across from us, the green building, is a hydroelectric plant, the Waimea hydroelectric plant. That was rebuilt in 1952. 1947, there was a big flood. The hydro plant was located on this side of the riverbank. It got washed out, and then they decided to carve a hole into the mountain and recess it back into the wall there to protect it from flooding, and it's been there ever since.
Sadly, Landis Ignacio passed away in 2017. Until his death, he was the manager of the Kekaha Agricultural Association, or KAA, which was formed by 5 farmers in 2003 to protect the century-old complex infrastructure that moves water to and fro here.
The association was formed during the period when the sugar plantation announced its closure, and the association wanted to step in and continue to preserve, protect the infrastructure that the plantation built over 100 years ago. So the KAA basically maintains the 2 ditch systems, the Koke ditch and the Kekaha ditch, as well as the roads, drainage system, electrical distribution system, and 2 hydroelectric plants.
Water's totally critical to everything you do.
Water obviously is the heart of the industry on West Kauai, and without water there'd be no farming.
Distance, you write 11.0.
Aaron Strauch, a hydrologist with the Hawaii Commission on Water Resource Management, puts a fine point on the complexity and extent of the Waimea water system.
There are 2 integrated ditch systems that include multiple diversions, 2 coupled hydropower plants, many points of control, multiple reservoirs. There's multiple landowners, DHHL, state parks, DLNR, Forest Reserve, and then ADC. And the ditches cross all of them. So it becomes quite cumbersome to manage something that has multiple stakeholders.
Including the local utility co-op, which had long been looking at building hydroelectric capacity in West Kauai, using the waters of the Waimea.
We own 2 hydro projects on the east side of the island, and the west side, after our investigation where the Pu'uopai and Pu'ulua reservoirs are, is the most attractive hydro opportunity on the island at this point. So we've been looking out there and investigating and doing developmental work for quite some time out there. One of the big issues was water, and until this historic mediation settlement took place, the water was an unresolved issue, and you clearly can't do a hydro project unless water is settled.
The historic mediation settlement, announced by the State Water Commission in April 2017, it focuses on adequate water supply for the river, sustainable agriculture, and renewable energy, resolves claims for current users, and establishes a framework for the balanced and sustainable uses of water in West Kauai well into the future. A future that until this agreement could have been as muddy as the Waimea River's mouth.
From our standpoint, it was critical that this settlement be done because the alternative of going into a contested case historically could be a decade or more of time to settle it out, and we just didn't have the patience to wait a decade on a development project. It would cost too much money.
Conveyed from about 380 feet in elevation down to the river floor, goes under the river, comes up on the west bank.
For the first time, the settlement protects the in-stream uses of the watershed, and that includes habitat for freshwater fish, ecosystem services, water quality, traditional and customary practices, recreational and aesthetic values, things that weren't protected under the original management of the watershed.
Yes. It's getting all your proper people together and working together as a community and pushing forward to what we can get for our future. This is for our future, for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, to have the waters restored back into our rivers.
When you settle a case, that's really the beginning of the next phase. I mean, people like to pop the champagne and say we're all done and we can move on. But as we've learned from long experience in a variety of cases, in a variety of contexts, getting the agreement, getting the ruling, getting the order from the commission puts to a close some aspects of the case, but other aspects of the case are going to need continued monitoring, enforcement, and oversight to make sure that the wins that we got on paper translate into wins on the ground and in the river.
He and everyone involved in the settlement reached under the leadership of mediator Robbie Alm on an agreement that resulted in some wins and some losses for all.
Everybody won and everybody lost. Earth Justice got restoration of stream flows, and DHHL got water for their Malca lands and the potential for a pump storage hydropower plant. KIUC gets the potential to explore alternative energy resources, and the Keikaha Agriculture Association maintains the water necessary for agriculture on the monoplanes. At the same time, the ecosystem is protected.
I'm glad that we did get a settlement, but I'm one of those. I come from a generation where even though we get something, it's never going to be enough. And in this case, it definitely isn't. But it's definitely also a good step in the right direction, I believe. And if we can, along the road, there's going to be many more good steps and great steps that we're going to have to take in getting the rest of it restored into our river.
With the agreement in hand, a lot of the hard work begins and will continue into the foreseeable future. The beauty of this, as the chair of the Water Commission concluded, this is an example of multi-party environmental dispute resolution, which addressed complex issues in a holistic and comprehensive manner. It is a result of an effort to find creative solutions and broad commonalities through the dedication and hard work of all parties involved.
The time has come that we needed to take necessary action, and we didn't want to prolong the decision. So we basically went ahead and tried to support it as much as possible. We also recognize that there will be sacrifices that will be needed to be made. We would need to implement changes over time as well. But we felt that it was best for the future and the future of agriculture to get this resolved and move forward.